We'll now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Fleming, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McCarthy, in Louisiana we have a saying that the chef should occasionally taste her own sauce. What do I mean by that? I want to bring up a different issue, but it is connected. Are you familiar with the Camp Minden issue relative to the EPA? It was handled out of Dallas.
Yes, I am.
Okay. What happened was there was a big explosion in 2012 as a result of propellant, this explosive that had accumulated over 15 million pounds, and it was a lack of oversight by the U.S. Army over this private company that allowed this to happen. So we had the problem with how are we going to get rid of this 15 million pounds, and of course EPA became involved. But we were shocked that the EPA, first of all, said, well, we're not sure. I guess, you know, the local state will probably have to pay for it. We finally got money from the Superfund. But then after analysis, the EPA said, we're just going to burn it in the open, which means all of these toxic substances, arsenic, lead, whatever, going into the air and into our ground and into our water. Now, I think back about the coal industry that's been more or less severely hampered, if not shut down, because of CO2 emissions, which certainly is not as toxic, if toxic at all, as arsenic and lead. Coal-fired plants being shut down, and now we've got the waters of the U.S. But I was shocked, and the local community was shocked, when the EPA came in and said, we see nothing wrong with open burn of 15 million pounds of propellant. And we pushed back on it. We had many hearings locally. We finally got the EPA to back down and to allow closed burning, which is a more costly procedure. But it really seems to me ironic that the EPA, which can provide huge fines on private industry and individuals, can actually put people in jail through criminal activities of pollution, would be so cavalier in this case. And in fact, only because of pushback from the community did we get the EPA to do the right thing. The EPA was clearly trying to take the shortcuts and avoid the cost. And then you look at this situation. Incompetently, the EPA allowed, of course, this toxic spill, this water that is now in our environment. It'll never be cleaned up completely. So I guess what I'm saying is it seems like to me there's a double standard. The EPA is not holding itself to the same standards that you hold individuals and industry itself to.
Well, so let me respond on Camp Minden, because I actually couldn't be more pleased of the outcome, and it took a long time to get there, and I do appreciate the way in which the state intervened on that, as well as all of the elected officials.
Yes.
So it was an option that was chosen by the DOD. It was not an uncontrolled burn, but I think we've ended up in a much better place, and one that the community really participated wonderfully well in, and I couldn't be more pleased. Now, in terms of this effort, you know, I want you to understand, and I'm sure that you do, that EPA's job was to try to support an effort to address what we knew was almost a likely inevitability of a blowout at that mine, as well as knowing that the river was being damaged each and every day as a result of the mining in the upper Animas. Should that spill have occurred? No. Are we going to figure out whether we could have done something about it, done something different?
Well, but here's my question, Ms. McCarthy. I appreciate that. My question is that private citizens, Americans, and companies are held to a high standard, and the punishments are severe. But we're not hearing today of any punishments or even reduction in pay or even firings that are going to occur because of this incompetency. So that's the point I'm making, is a double standard. Yes, I know you're doing the best you can and so forth. But one agency after another, the VA and now the EPA, has these responsibilities and these broad powers that no single company has to inflict damage, to inflict severe punishment and penalties on Americans, and yet we don't find anything within the agency where the decision makers and the people with all this power have any accountability for that.
Sir, when a spill like this happens, the accountability is for the person who actually needs to take responsibility for that spill to do so, which we had. And the second level is, how did it happen, and was there activity that should have been done differently? Is it criminal? Is it civil? Is it negligent? That's what we're looking at now, and we're independently having that done. And I will live with those consequences, and I will appropriately take action.
Well, we'll certainly want to hear who those decision makers were and what happened to them. Thank you. Now, yield back.
Thank the gentleman. We'll now recognize the gentleman